and gentlemen, welcome to Wrestling Art with Chris Things.
Ray! Do the hammerlock! I do the hammerlock! Ray! Do the hammerlock, you turkey necks! Yeah, do the hammerlock! I do the hammerlock!
Everybody's doing it. Hello, pals. This is Chris Things Brian here, your host, your friend, your wrestling art guy, and this is Wrestling Art with Chris Things, a little old podcast that I do. We're up to our my gosh, it's like 80 something episodes. How did this happen? I don't know. But we have a very special episode of the show for you today. One that I've been meaning to get together for quite some time, but we finally made it happen with a very busy man. That busy man being Phil Schneider, my partner in crime for Way of the Blade and assorted things. And we're finally doing it, guys. We're going to chop it up and have a good old behind-the-scenes making of Way of the Blade, the AEW edition chat. We're gonna talk all about it. Very much looking forward to that one. I have a lot of mixed kind of feelings about this book and the big release, as I've sort of touched on, before in my solo edition, talking about the release of the book, as well as some different other bits and pieces that I've said on here. But I am overall very excited and very proud of the work that we did. If you do want to go back and listen to my my solo edition of the book, of the book release, I spoke a little bit about how I when we started this project in mid 2023, I quit my job to do it basically. I was still in the world of marketing and graphic design back then. And I'd had this art thing going, this art practice of mine going. I think I committed to doing it at least in a public sense in like 2016. So I've been working away at it for quite some time and growing as an artist over that time as well. You look back at some of that early stuff that I did, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that was a jumping off point for me to be like, hey, could I maybe be an artist / illustrator full time? And that's always what I wanted to do and wanted to be. But it's a scary thing to do, leaving behind the comfort and reliability of that weekly check, working for someone else for the complete unknown. And this book, I thought, was a sign that all right, I had the first Way of the Blade that Phil and I and Jonathan Snowden of Hybrid Shoot all did together, and I think that was really cool. I'm so proud of that first book, and I think the success of that and kind of the underground success of it really set up so much of the stuff that I've been able to have the privilege of doing thereafter. When I heard that we were doing it again and this was going to be the AEW edition of the book, I was like, okay, man, like, let's jump in with both feet and just give this a go. In a lot of ways, I look back on that timing of doing that, and I kind of felt like the universe was telling me that it was time to give this a go. There's other things that I look at, and I'm just like, my gosh, how at that point did you think that you were going to be able to get a full-time income out of this thing where you were at? But you learn and you grow, and that's the whole thing. And you have to take chances, and you have to put yourself in a terrifying position of being not sure how you're going to pay your rent to really kind of be in this in all the ways. So I think it was good. I'm glad that I did it, and yeah, it marked a very special kind of point in my life of trying to be full-time at doing this thing. So yeah, a lot of weird feelings about the book release. It obviously took quite a while, and there's a lot of things involved and a lot of different people that were involved as well. But yeah, like it finally being out there for people to pick up. Yeah, I'm super proud of it. It's been super amazing to see all of the other people, receive it and, be able to hold it in their hands and read it. I've heard a bunch of people say they've already finished it, and they were really stoked. And I think that Phil did an amazing job with the writing of the book, and those interviews with the various AEW talent. We'll talk a little bit about that in the interview today. But there's some really good stuff in there, and I guess if I look at it now, look at sort of my part of that, of doing the illustrations, doing the cover art, doing a portrait of Tony Khan holding a bloody pencil as the bloody Booker man, I guess that is all this thing. To doing, it was actually a really nice group portrait that they got me to do of all three of us, of Jonathan and Phil and myself. That's in that book as well. And then, yeah, obviously all of the actual internal illustrations itself, like I think it's like 60 or 70 illustrations all up. This time we took a different approach where it's a bit less matches than the full 100 of the previous book, but, kind of Phil got to do a bunch of interviews and maybe get a bit more out of those individual matches than it was afforded the space to do so for the first book. So I think that was super cool. But yeah, so I got to do at least 2 illustrations per match in the way that we did it. So that was really cool and added a little bit of storytelling ability, I guess, for the way that I did illustrations. So from like an artist's perspective, when I did that first book, The First Way of the Blade, it was so hard on so many occasions trying to just pick that one moment that was going to be reflective of the entire match. And of course I then, still kind of have that challenge now with my Match of the Week illustration series. And it's kind of a fun challenge, if I'm being real, but it was extra cool to kind of get to do 2, because you get to sort of you can be a little bit creative with how I kind of can pick those 2 moments. And yeah, so I was pretty stoked on that. There's a lot of matches in that book that I really, really love. For this episode, as I was mentioning to Phil in the interview to come, I think that trying to pick a favourite match of the lot was a very hard task, off the top of my head, some of the real favourites in there have got to be that, like, the double dog collar tag match between the Briscoes and FTR. That one holds a very special place in my heart, obviously, with the passing of Jay and everything, but also because, like, the first of that trilogy in Dallas, I actually got to be there in person. And that was such a special match to get to appreciate in person. So then getting to illustrate for the book the final match of that trilogy was a very special thing, and one that I took very seriously. So I hope I did that one justice. But I'm very proud of those illustrations. To other ones like the Punk and Kingston, I think is maybe my favorite matches in the entire thing. And that was another one where I just really did my best to try to capture the emotion of that. More on that in the chat with Phil. And, other ones that were just like little surprise, amazing matches were, stuff like Mox versus Yuta or Danielson versus Garcia or those early Danielson versus Hangman matches I adored. The first Hangman Page versus Moxley Texas Death Match I absolutely adored, and look back on those illustrations and just hyper violent. I might be limited how much I can post those ones on social media, to be honest. But the two being Hangman choking Mox over the top rope, and then the triangle where he's stabbing him with that fork. Incredible, intense moment. To ones like, thinking now, another of my real favourites is that Jericho-Nick Gage match with the light tubes, with the pizza cutter, with that incredible was it Domino's ad that came in after it. Oh my gosh. This whole thing really was a labour of love, and something that I feel so lucky to have been involved in. I before we get into the chat with Phil, just want to say a massive thank you to Phil, to Jonathan Snowden, to Hybrid Shoot, to everyone for allowing me to be a part of this thing, and I'm super stoked to continue this partnership with Phil and hopefully with Hybrid Shoot too, to continue this weird magic that we got going on together. Makes me so happy to get to do this stuff, guys. And for this book, I think I look at it and it's celebrating those early years of AEW that I personally was very passionate about. And there was a lot of love that I had for the company in those years and the product that we're putting out. So to get to celebrate that period in this book is a very cool thing for me. So I'm stoked on it, and I do think the book, now that it's released, there is a bit of a kind of like people sleeping on it kind of nature. It didn't quite get the massive buzz on release that the previous one might have. So I guess that's why I'm doing this kind of stuff. I just want to spread the word, let people know, sort of, I don't know, I think we did a pretty cool thing here. So if you'll do want to support, that'd be greatly appreciated. The book is available right now on Amazon worldwide, I believe, both in paperback form as well as Kindle. If you want to check it out, please do. If you're a fan of those early years of AEW, like myself, and passionate about great bloody wrestling matches, I think you'll dig it. And those interviews and Phil's writing is just top notch. So proud to be part of something that Phil is writing in that sense. Check it out. And if you've already got it, please feel welcome to write a review, or even just swing me a message and tell me what your favourite matches were, or favourite illustrations in the book were as well. Alright, I think that's about it. That's enough of waffling on here. Let's jump into our interview with Phil. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited to have a gentleman that I always love chopping it up with, Phil Schneider, back on the show. Welcome to the podcast, Phil.
Always glad to do it, Chris. Always love chatting with you.
Oh, likewise. Definitely enjoy the nerding out about all the things with you whenever I get the chance. And today is a very special one. I thought we could finally do an official Way of the Blade AEW edition chat about the book, about the process, about when we started this thing to it finally now being out and available for people to buy. But it's I have so many emotions. I don't even know where to start. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like we were on the 5-yard line for a long time with this book. And so I was so happy it finally is out. People can see it. We, spent a fair amount of time working on this. Probably more work on this one than I did in the first one, just because, for me, it was also like all of these interviews and
Yes.
sort of putting all that part of it into a readable format in a way that, the other one I just had to write. So I didn't have to do anything but just put pencil to paper or fingers on keyboards and bang out the writing. And here it was do the writing and an addition, or a lot of logistical things about getting all these interviews together and transcribing them and making them sort of flow as the thing for people to read. So a lot of work into this one, and I was really happy to see it out. And I was really happy how it turned out. And I wasn't always 100% sure that this was gonna come out as well as the first one, but I was pretty happy with the way it was. It was like focusing on one thing like that, right? I think one of the great things about the first book was its sort of breadth. You know what I mean? And there's less of that
insane variety.
Right, and here it's where it's really is this one promotion over half a dozen years, and you're often writing about the same people more than I was in the first book. It helped that I had done some of this stuff writing for the Ringer already, so I was able to I had an outline that I could then adjust accordingly. So that was a little helpful, but mostly this one was a little trickier. So and I'm happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah,
I think I'm probably
me too.
I'm probably a better writer now than I was when we did the first book, because I had that year plus at the Ringer where I was writing every week and really professionally, as opposed to just on Segunda Caída, where I wasn't necessarily that Segunda Caída, I'll just whip up some stuff about Fujiwara and throw it out there. I wasn't necessarily that worried like editing and so I think I was probably a better writer now than I was when we did the first book. So I think so especially a couple of them, I'm like, this is actually pretty good. I'm usually a relatively harsh critic of my own writing.
It comes with the territory. It's crazy to think how long ago the original Way of the Blade was now, and like when we actually sort of started that project. That's like just feels bizarre when I look at like the date of the original files that I have on my computer for like the illustrations from that thing, and then fast forward to this one, and I think we officially started, or at least I started this project, I think like mid 2023, May of 2023, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild. And I it's funny you say about how you look at it and with a bit more of the experience, you kind of feel like your writing's better. Like in some ways, I look at this for myself as well with like the illustrations, and I feel like I kind of from the process of the first book, had a bit more of a way of doing things, a bit more of a process kind of down. And then I feel like some of the illustrations I did for this one, I'm probably even more like proud of than the original ones. And I guess it's all sort of just like growing as an artist, growing as a writer. That experience is kind of a big
work
part of
on
things.
it. I mean, you do it enough, you get better at it, right? And especially, I mean, I wrote forever, for a long, long time, but the Death Valley Driver, Segunda Caída, those things they're a lot more sort of I mean, I spend a lot of time on the stuff I do for those things, but it's just like it's not as like it's not as it's more of like fun amateur work in a way that a book's professional. The writing I've been doing, for the Ringer, the writing I do for Yahoo now, that's like that's actual. People are paying me to do it, so like you have like this responsibility. It's like this can't be. I can't. I felt fine half-assing a Black Terror review or two for Scooter but I got to put my foot in this. I can't just whip off a couple jokes and a couple observations and hit post. With something where somebody's actually, their American dollars are coming into my bank account for. So, or a book, which is people are paying for, right? Like people, pay $20 to see this, and you want the stuff you do to be worth the money that they're spending and the time they're spending reading it. So,
Sure.
it puts a little more pressure, I think, on your shoulders than for doing it as kind of a fun thing that, if 10 people read or 100 people read or 1,000 people read or whatever, right?
I guess the tricky part is like, I think part of the magic of it is sort of like the playful nature of it, and kind of like that same kind of like playful vibe that you would have from the kind of stuff from like Sukun Kaida or whatever. It's like, I feel like it's a big thing to sometimes like not overthink and over perfect and keep that kind of like raw enthusiasm about things sometimes.
Yeah, I try to have a voice, and you try to keep that relatively consistent through all the stuff you write. Like you want it to feel like you and and I mean I don't know. I'm not a lot of like the thing. A lot of wrestling reviewing. There's some people that do it good, but a lot of times you read it, it's just like you're just telling me this guy did an arm drag and then he did a drop. I mean, what would you find me a through line? Like you want to find a through line of something interesting to say about this as opposed to just listing off 10 cool moves. And when you're doing something like this, you got to try to find a through line. You got to find something what makes this memorable, what makes this interesting, what about this match makes it more interesting than something like AEW, right? They're putting on 4 hours of TV a week plus pay-per-views plus ROH. I mean, they're putting out so much stuff. If you're going to pick something out and say this is special, you want to have something about it that's special more than just this guy bled a lot or this guy took a stupid bump on his head. So you try to think about that when you're writing it. Right? Well, what makes this actually worth highlighting?
Yeah, it's interesting you say through line, because I was thinking the same thing, when I was kind of like preparing for our chat and thinking about kind of the grouping of matches that we have here in this book. And it's funny you say like about the, maybe not as much crazy variety in some ways as the previous book, but, for it being all in one company, like I looked at the sort of weird combination of matches that we ended up having here, as I was kind of going through it. And I think there is still like an amazing level of variety in this one, in the AEW edition of the book. I think that says something kind of like really good about AEW, that there is so many different types of matches. And even if we're just talking about the bloody matches, so many different types of like great bloody matches. I found it really interesting going through it, kind of like, and I think Jonathan, went into it a little bit in his introduction kind of thing for the book, about kind of like you've got the great physical matches that happen to involve blood, and then you have the crazy hardcore matches that are like all about the spectacle and the blood, and then you have just like great matches that just happen to involve blood. Like it's sort of a really interesting mix, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and they've done just some really crazy stuff over the years that like had where it is like, wow, you didn't expect this was ever going to be on a cable network television show, right? You're going to have spike bats and glass and pizza cutters. It's like the stuff that you didn't think had really been the edges of the wrestling world, and now it's like, wow, they really why was we watching it again? It's like, They slammed that guy through a windshield, didn't they? They were really screwing around in this match, kind of, which, I'm not, I mean, it's funny because I've written 2 books about bloody wrestling and, working on a third one. But I'm not like a giant deathmatch guy. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
neither.
I've liked some of that stuff, and the best stuff I've, doing, and we're doing, the deathmatch canon right now on Way of the Blade Pod. We sort of took the summer off. We're starting that up again next week. And so I'm watching a lot of this stuff, but it's like, we did our CZW episode. I didn't really watch any of those matches. And some of them I watching, I was like, I know, Bucky, JR, you love this shit. That kind of sucks. So it's funny that, I don't know. It's like the real stuff that I really love there, I don't know is the craziest stuff. Something like Bryan Danielson Roosh. That my kind of shit. That more than, one of these really, really insane, weapons and stuff kind of matches. Like I really like, that kind of thing because I'm my heart an 80s NWA guy, right? Dusty Rhodes wasn't necessarily getting hit with light tubes. You know what I mean? Like as much like sometimes, but that's the thing that, that's the kind of wrestling that, really lights up the pleasure centers of my brain even still.
Or
Right?
like the Sangre Chicana MS1 kind of
Yeah,
stuff. Like that's what reminded me of that one big time.
Yeah. It's funny. One of the great things about being a wrestling fan is there's so much stuff that even now, after writing about this and being, a very like, I've been a guy who has been watching tapes and trading stuff and looking for wrestling all over the world. I've been doing that since, the late 90s, right? So, almost 30, probably 30 years of not just watching stuff on TV, but actively tape trading and things like that. You still find things that you didn't know were out there or that are still. We were talking about Sangre Chicana I just watched a Sangre Chicana Latin Sangre Chicana heavy metal street fight.
I saw people talking about this one. I haven't actually watched it yet. Not even
like an obscure this was a handout. On the big shows, but like 97 AAA I wasn't checking for that as much, and it escaped me, and obviously Sangre Chicana is my favorite match of all time. There's a guy I like, and I watched that thing, 2-3 days ago. His buddy Elliot, I guess, stumbled across it on YouTube and checked it out. It was like, holy shit, this is really great. I'm like, oh, it does look pretty great from the GIF you showed me. And then I watched it, really fucking great. I mean, really incredible stuff. Great stuff. Go watch it when you get a chance. It's on YouTube. Or 17 minutes long, and it's like it's not as good as Sangre Chicana MS1 or Chicana Pero Aguayo, but it's not that much worse than them. Like it's in the same, like if those are just that's the A plus tier of Lucha Brawls, this is probably in the A tier of Lucha Brawls. So it's not as good as the absolute 7 best ones ever, but it's probably somewhere in the teens. And I didn't know that.
I'm sold completely on just getting to see old man Sangre Chicana. That gets me going.
I don't think at this point. I think he he lived a hard life. I think he's probably just for a luchador. It wasn't that old. I think he was probably in his 40s, right? Like that's nothing. And Blue Panther's out here putting on match of the years and 64 years old.
Incredible, man. Yeah, shout out to Elliot's Wrestling. Like I love that Twitter account so much goodness that I've gotten onto with his lists and everything, dude. So good. Yeah,
but I mean that's one of the cool things about about being a fan is like you're not running out of absolute perfect classic. I still haven't seen them all, and you're still getting still great stuff happening every week. Little maybe not as many great things. I mean, I don't, it's so kind of funny that you have so much access to everything now. It's like, man, why wasn't there an IWTV around in 1987 and where instead of live streaming, ICW hardcore shows that weren't live streaming, Monday night Mid-South Coliseum cards.
Oh my gosh, I wish.
How incredible would this have been if if New Japan World was around when New Japan was awesome, and you could just watch like 1991 New Japan as opposed to 2025 every single episode of every evil match from 2025 New Japan. If you could watch every Shinya Hashimoto match in 1993 or
Even if I could just get every
match.
bit of Kazunari Murakami from that early 2000s run, I feel like the footage of that's super spotty.
Yeah, exactly. So but still, find this cool shit every day. I mean, I've been watching a little more ROH lately because it feels like ROH got a little Dean pilled lately because they got they had my guy Adam Priest had a title match against Bandito a couple weeks ago. They had Virus, Shalwa. They have Shalwa Lee Moriarty tonight. Was trying to book Shalwa Lee Moriarty on a Deed show, and Tony fucking snaked it and put it on. It's going to put it on their ROH pay per view before I can get it on a Deed show. So it's there's still fun stuff, man. It's still there's still lots of things we got to show coming up in less than a month. It's not 100% put together yet, but there'll be some shit going on in Philly. Do I know what it is yet? I don't. It's going to be cool, probably.
Hey, that's the magic of it, right? Yeah, dude, I can't keep up with half the stuff that I want to watch, and then when you get down these rabbit holes of being like, oh man, I just want to watch a lot of Memphis, or I just want to get into whatever the heck it is, or whatever Volta's releasing or whatever. It's like it's a good time, and there's no lack of great stuff to watch, but back to the book, I was very interested to work out. So I got your list, when we were working on this together. I got our matches. We didn't have as many matches as the original Way of the Blade, but I think that lent itself to some cool things for this one. I got to do kind of more illustrations for each match and tell a little bit more of a story with the combination of them. You got to do all those amazing interviews and then lead on to some other stuff of these different other kind of rabbit holes that we're talking about with different dog collar matches and shit. But can I ask, when you were refining this list, were there any really tough calls that you had to kind of make in terms of the ones you included?
Not really. I mean, it had blood, and I thought it was good. It was kind of going to make it in the thing because this wasn't 100. I mean, I didn't want to repeat. I didn't want to repeat matches.
Yes, right.
So I didn't want to have the same matchup a bunch of times. So I could have written about all 3 Briscoe FTR matches, for example. But I was just it didn't feel to me like I'd have enough different things to say about the 3 of them. And I felt like I could say what I wanted to say about the dog collar match and have that sort of stand as a representative of all of them. Similarly, I mean, I don't think we repeated any matches in the Way of the Blade, did we? Maybe
I think we had 2 of the Piper Valentine.
Oh yeah, we had 2 Piper. That's fine.
I think. But I mean, as we should,
as we should have, yeah. But so I think there was, outside of that though, I didn't think there was anything that I just cut. Obviously, the shit kept happening when we were kind of done with the book, right? So we kept on adding stuff at the end. There was 3 matches that got added in after I had basically been done, and then it was like, well, then the Swerve. Hangman Page happened, and then the match at Wembley happened, and Tony Khan really wanted that in the book because he was so proud about getting to do this crazy hardcore match in the Royal Box at Wembley Stadium, and he was like, "Oh, you got to write about that." I'm like, "All right, no problem." So stuff kept getting added. Obviously, if we'd put the book off for another month, then we would have had another, put it off for another 6 months. We would have had another, been able to write about Tony Storm, Mariah May, or I got to see, that really, really great Mark Briscoe Ricochet stretcher match. I was at that, at that show. I got to see that live, right? So that was
nice.
pretty great because that was, obviously we did Dean 2 right before Death Before Dishonor, so we all were at Death Before Dishonor the next night. So I was got to see that show live. AEW pay-per-views are long. You ever been to an AEW pay-per-view?
I've been to some of the TV tapings, but I've never been to one of the pay-per-views.
You're there for a minute. You're there for a while. It's like you're like, oh man, this is really taking. So those are because we were coming off like the adrenaline high and doing the show the night before, and now we're just like, oh man, still 5 more matches to go, huh? Okay.
I was there in person.
You'll get a Diet Coke from catering. This is going to take I'm gonna get some energy for this show.
I can say that I was there in person for one of the matches that's in this book. I was there in Boston for the Yuta versus Moxley match where Yuta just bleeds a ton. And that was a fantastic match in person and a really great venue. I really love that previous venue they used to run in Boston before they moved on to some of the other ones. It was like the university kind of building. It had really, really cool vibes. Great experience.
I remember I was on a plane, I think, when that match happened. I don't know where I was going. I don't remember what exactly it was. But I was on a plane. And like when I got off the plane, it was like, 30 DMs and fucking messages on Twitter saying, "Oh shit, there's a Way of the Blade, next Way of the Blade for sure happened." Yo, man, Will Phil, did you see this crazy shit? So I remember that much. I remember my phone was blowing up. Like on a plane for 3 hours. The Moxley's interview about that match was really cool, where he basically talked about how this all kind of came together almost by happenstance, right? Like it didn't. Something. I think it was the night. Maybe that was the night he was supposed to wrestle Brian Kendrick. I think was the one.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
And he talked about how Brian Kendrick got himself canceled moments before the show, so this was really thrown together and kind of made Yuta's career basically.
Yeah.
And he talked about how kind of he wanted to, I think what was some quote about like sometimes can you put 10 pounds of shit in a 10-pound bag. Sometimes you got to put an extra 5 pounds of shit in just to do it. I was thinking that was kind of his idea about that match. I mean, Moxley is, as the quotes I got from Moxley, incredible. I mean, just the way he he has such an interesting way of thinking about wrestling. And, was really, really, candid and talked a lot about it. I got a lot of that way. Some of the interviews were a little more, I liked all of them, but some of them were a little less. You didn't get as deep into it as, Lance Archer didn't go as deep into his interview as Moxley did. But Moxley and Danielson and Eddie were like the three of us, just like they really dove down and talked a lot about these things and got a lot of really great quotes.
So good. That was everything I was hoping for out of when I heard there was going to be these interviews, and I was just like, oh man, I really hope they get into the the nuts and bolts.
I think I got a lot better at interviewing people over the course of doing this too, in a way that isn't something that I had done that much previously. I started doing it a little bit for the Ringer, and some of the later stuff I wrote for them after I had the weekly column were kind of more profile things with lots of interviews. But I think that was a course of another skill I was able to develop. And I've done a lot of the things I've been doing for Yahoo have been these kind of, interview profile stuff. They're not as interested in match listicles. So it's like, okay, instead I'm going to interview a bunch of people about Gypsy Joe or interview a bunch of people or interview Paul. I did this thing. The most recent thing I interviewed Paul Heyman about an ECW What If and got to talk. So I've gotten better. I've gotten more. And we're in the early stages of working on the third book. I got a list. I've started some writing and given you a list to start thinking about. Right? I don't know if you've done any drawing, but you got a list to start.
Yes.
And one of the things I want to do is see if there's some interviews I can do for this. The Way of the Blade 1 style with the interview portion of it that we had with. So it's going to require me to track down some people. But pigeonhole some people at Dean 3 or something like that. Bring a recorder app on my phone or something like that. I'm just gonna snatch somebody off the catering and talk to them for a second.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I'm thinking about doing some of that too. So I'm kind of one of the things I've been doing, I'm putting the list together is like, well, I kind of want who might I be able to talk to about some of this stuff.
Man, I hope so. That would be. I mean, I guess it's funny. Like we're getting to a stage where a lot of these dudes are getting older, and we're seeing guys like passing away like left and right. So it's like, yeah, I guess as much as we can, try to get these stories out of people while they're still around. Yeah, I was super like when I was looking through the list for myself. There were some matches that stood out to me that when I watched them initially, I was like, oh, that was awesome, but then it kind of quickly, disappeared from my brain. And then when I was going through them for the book, they really like kind of on rewatch, they got so much better. And I was like, man, I really didn't notice at the time how completely awesome that Danielson versus Garcia match was, for example. That like when I rewatched it, I was like, holy shit, this thing is actually even better now watching it like a year or two down the road. Like, or another like weird little one that I absolutely adored on rewatch far more than initially was the Evil Uno versus Moxley match. These weird little kind of surprise matches I really, really got a kick out of.
Evil Uno, I think, was the first person I interviewed for the book.
Yeah.
I think my first interview was Evil Uno. Like when they said, well, here we can get you Evil Uno. And I was like, shit, this isn't going to work. The best you guys can get me is Evil Uno. But I'll definitely talk to Evil Uno. Let's set it up. I was like, oh, this is going to be the best you guys are going to be able to get me. No shade on my guy Evil Uno, who I thought had some really cool quotes about how this is like the first time he ever bled in a match and how he always really wanted to do it. And, it was a really cool conversation. But I remember being a little concerned when that was those were the names they brought me. It was like the first three were like Evil Uno, Lance Archer, and the Bunny, who I thought I got all quotes out of. But I was like, this is not going to be a successful if I'm going to get access to that tier of a superstar, right? It's like hopefully I can get at least some guys who, my writing plus here's what the Bunny thought of her match. A cool interview with the Bunny. She's really talking about a big fan of horror movies she was and how excited she was to be in this kind of horror movie wrestling match.
Oh man, yeah, the Uno match was actually super fun to illustrate because I think when I was really going through it, it was a really great like close up shot of that incredible blade job that Uno did, and that the torn mask and the blood like bloody eye kind of like bit. It was just a really interesting. I think that was when Moxley had him in the bulldog choke. And then the pile driver was just such a good pile driver. I was super excited to at least get one pile driver in the book with the illustrations. But no, the reason I brought that up was because I was interested if there was anything that stood out to you now looking back on it that, when you went through these matches, when you're rewatching it to do the write-ups for them, any that stood out that, didn't necessarily stand out to you as much when you originally watched them, but like when you went through them, you're like, this is actually really, really something.
I think, I don't know if it's exactly the answer to that question, but Jericho Omega, which is not a Phil match on paper, particularly. That's not my particular flavor of chips, right? Those two guys in general, and them matching up with each other is not something I necessarily. Not something that excited me. And I don't even know that I necessarily even watched it. This was from like the first paper. I don't even know that I watched it when it first happened. I might have, probably. It's before I was writing for the Ringer, so I wouldn't have had a responsibility to watch it. And I definitely watched the Dustin match, right? But it was like, did I watch the Kenny Omega? Was not like a guy who, not my kind of guy, and Jericho was a bit. But then when I watched it for this, I was like, yeah, actually pretty goddamn good. Jericho's really, these guys are really potatoing the shit out of each other. Really, I wasn't really expecting this kind of like these two guys to wrestle like a Karisu match from FMW, but that's what it kind of felt like.
Yeah.
Elbow hit him in the neck and the side of his neck in a way, and his face is turning bruised up and purple. And Jericho's a guy. It's funny, like, I mean, I think most people are kind of sick of him at this point, and he's been in AEW since the beginning, and he obviously there's a lot of I think your overall Jericho experience is something that people aren't super into, but it's like the Jericho in this book, it's pretty great matches in interesting, unexpected ways where you kind of, in some ways, I came up a much bigger Jericho fan after putting together this book than I was before, or thought I would be, because I'm part of me's like going, well, shit, man, Jericho doesn't need to let fucking Nick Gage cut him with a pizza cutter, right? Like, at this point, he's like that kind of stuff. It's like, he doesn't need to do that. Like, he went in there and had like a straight up CZW Smyrna, Delaware King of the, tournament of death match with fucking Nick Gage in a way that, why would he have to sell that much and take that much punishment from a guy who showed up once on TV and never showed up again, and probably will
I
never
love that happened.
Or the Ishii match that's in the book.
I was about to say, like, blading the chest.
Like,
my gosh.
You're going to have this match again. You're going to bring in Ishii and then retcon a story about how you guys are feuding over like some shit that happened in the War Dojo, that he was like Jericho's addicted to Ishii when Ishii was his young boy at the War Dojo. That's probably not true, but like they're gonna do like this one-off TV match based on wrestling romance backstory feuds from 20 years ago, and then Jericho's gonna let Ishii like beat the living shit out of him. I mean, like, as bad a beating as I've ever seen Ishii lay on somebody, even like with the matches against Shibata. He's like just absolutely pulverizing Jericho's chest. He's bleeding all over the place. And part of you goes, man, this guy could have skated. You know what I mean? Like, but still he would, he'd show up and he'd do this. And I think the Eddie Kingston barbed wire match was kind of a failure as a match. It didn't make it in the book, as much as, Eddie's my guy. But, he still did that match. He still took a bunch of bumps into barbed wire. And it's like, guy's like in his 50s and a big star and doesn't need to do that. Could easily have spent this time in the WWE just,
posted,
making faces at Roman Reigns, like it's not any problem. And yes, completely coasting and definitely has not. And while it's like not a guy who I am excited to see return to weekly television when he does, I kind of came out of this going, Jericho. He's got his moments, man. There's some moments.
Yeah,
sure.
100%. I think watching back some of those earlier matches, especially, kind of like it. It was interesting because I really love that stuff. And the whole thing of AEW as a company and coming in and being the first big time company to like challenge WWE. There's a lot of reasons why I was feeling like I was fully in on the ground floor and wanting AEW to succeed. So I was watching every one of those early shows, like every little bit and piece of it. And then, I don't have time to watch as much of it anymore these days. But at that point, I was a huge fan. So going back and watching this, it was interesting because I had a lot of kind of nostalgia for it, which is kind of weird having nostalgia for something that isn't that old. But especially going back and watching some of those Jericho matches, I was just like, man, I feel like people kind of forget how great this was, and just how much he was, like you're saying, going a lot harder than he even needed to. Especially that Omega match, where it's just like that bit where the spinning whatchamacallit, back elbow gimmick, man, that was brutal and wonderful.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. AEW, it's like for a while they were like a Danielson, Punk, Eddie Kingston, like these like my guys from IWA Mid-South and Ring of Honor 2005 tail of end of their career when it was that promotion. That was a promotion I was really, really into. Then you have like guys like Rush and things like that. And before that, when they were primarily Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, that era of New Japan guys promotion, I was less into it. And now it's like they're kind of really like an Osprey, So now, I mean, they're not that group of guys that that period I was really into it. They passed on and they're doing different things now. So it's like interesting. I like it more now than I did when it started, but less than I did like 3 years ago. But there's still a lot of things. But I think it's changing a lot, and like I said, the edges. I'm really enjoying a lot of things they're doing on the edges, right? Like I really into.
Lowe's knows to bring your vision to life, it's important to find the right color. That's why MyLowe's Rewards members get a free Valspar paint or exterior stain sample to test your look to confidently refresh your space. Offer valid in-store only 8/7 to 8/20. Limit 1 per customer while supplies last. Discount taken in time of purchase. See associate for details. Rewards program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
A lot of the stuff they're doing at ROH, and every once in a while they'll throw in some crazy, Lucha 6-man, and on Dynamite or something like that, or they'll let Dustin Rhodes kick a bunch of tacks into Kyle Fletcher's dick. And then I'm like, okay, I'm in. Got me. I'm in.
So good. Yeah, I think that period you're talking about. Like I was thinking of like some of my favorite matches. That was like one thing I wanted to talk to you about. Like getting towards the end today. Like our sort of favorite matches of the book. And of all of this sort of collection. And I think if I had to say my favorite, it probably would be just what you said, that Kingston Punk match, and especially like the backstory and bringing it back to like their days in IWA Mid-South, and the intensity of it, and the like I still think that may be Eddie Kingston's best match in AEW. Like I love me some Eddie Kingston, and it's a hard question because I really love those Danielson matches as well. But I think that Punk one. Oh yeah,
that Punk one was awesome. I mean, that's the other thing about. I mean, that and Anarchy in the Arena, right? Which is all that same era.
Yeah.
Of like where it's it's the same sort of thing where it's Eddie, Eddie ready to light somebody on fire, against these guys who this whole group of guys, right? Claudio and Punk and Daniels. They did a lot of like these guys who Eddie doesn't like, and I don't think he likes. I mean, I think that's the thing. I think. Eddie is, you can never really tell with Eddie Kingston, but I know Eddie, I talk to Eddie a lot, had him on the podcast, I've talked to him for Ringer articles, I talk to him for the book. I don't think he likes CM Punk, and I don't think he liked him, and I think that it was somewhat difficult for them to get that match done, and that's probably the reason it only ever happened once. But that was all like, I don't think Eddie does, I think a lot of times he doesn't fucking like the fact that Claudio still probably doesn't like the fact that Claudio Castagnoli didn't put him over in Chikara like he was supposed to, and left the promotion before doing that. And I don't think that still pisses him off. And that's one of the great things about Eddie Kingston. It's like, that guy, there's some real underlying dislike in a lot of these matches he has with these people, and you kind of feel that, right?
Absolutely. That's like the magic of it, really, for me. Is that where you sort of blend that, that thing of it's that real suspension of disbelief for me, like as a viewer. You watch it and you just fall into the full magic of it, and I think it's because there's an actual palpable hate in the air, and that's hard to recreate if guys are just buds.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm become pretty friendly. We're friendly with Chris Hero and Brian Danielson because they were over the course of doing these Dean shows. And I almost feel like, man, should I not be fucking friendly with these guys? But those guys were both really nice guys. I really enjoyed chatting with both of them. I was like, man, should I just tell these guys to go fuck themselves out of respect? out of like a responsibility for my buddy Eddie here. Where's my loyalty? Where should my loyalties lie? Oh yeah, Chris did some of the agent stuff for Dean too, and doing it for Dean 3 too. Like pals with this guy now, you know, usually, where I'm from, it's like if your buddy hates a guy, you fucking hate him too. You've got nothing against him. So I don't know. I'm growing as a person. So I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and not, I gotta hold grudges against anybody anymore.
I love it. that hero Eddie match, IW Mid South in the original book, one of my favorite matches. Speaking of ones to rewatch, like because I too was a bit of a IWA Mid South fan back in the day, and the Ted Petty Invitational and everything. But yeah, rewatching that one with current eyes just went so hard.
Yeah, and we talked a lot. We had him on I had Eddie on Way of the Blade Pod, and we talked a lot about that feud with Hero. And it's just like those were live rounds for a reason. I never talked to Chris about it. I'll have to see if I could chat with him about it at some point too. I've been trying to get him on the pod for like 4 years. But yeah, you always, I always like it when I like what if you feel like there's some real ugliness behind what's going on here. Always makes better wrestling, right? Even if who knows how much of that stuff is truth or fiction. That's the great thing about, I think, Eddie as a wrestler, the character is like you believe him.
Yes.
And do I know for sure? Maybe he's I got no beef with those guys at all anymore. But doesn't kind of believe that he does. Right?
Yeah, I want to believe.
So I do it. But he, one of my long-term goals is like I gotta get convinced. I want to run Hero Kingston and Dean 6 or something like that. I gotta convince.
Please.
I gotta convince Hero to get him put his trunks on. I gotta convince Eddie. A lot of all these. I have long-term plans and schemes. Whether any of those long-term plans and schemes will ever come out, but I got them. For this project. We're only guaranteed one more. Maybe they'll only be more. But if anybody's in Philadelphia and wants to stop by on September 6th and check out, we've got 2 things for sure we're doing.
Oh man,
a lot of
Caballera contra Caballera.
We're doing that. Demon. I cannot imagine. I don't see under any circumstances how that could possibly not be incredible. Like
yes.
with
excited.
How hard those guys go, and how. I think I haven't talked to Demas that much about it, but I know talked to Mad Dog, and he's sort of looking at this as a chance, a real an opportunity for him to really have a moment at the ECW arena. The way there's been moments in that arena. I think he sort of visualizes this as a part of that continuum of funk and Sabu and Sandman and Raven and Necro Butcher and Samoa Joe and all of the things that have happened in the Low-Key and Homicide. All things have happened in that arena over the years, and I think he sees this as like, all right, I can put one more, banner in the ceiling here for this. And I don't the Covenant of the Goat and the Gypsy Joe Invitational. That should be really cool. We'll see how that turns out. Got some ideas, but, and then we got some other guys. We got some guys who are going to definitely be on the show and will be in matches, right? So, and I know there's a lot of TBD still. I mean, one of the disadvantages of working with somebody else is, there's a lot more coordination that needs to become. There are a lot of advantages, like me not losing a lot of money and all the, I couldn't have booked fucking Blue Panther and Virus and Shawa and all these guys that worked like the Cybernetic on D2 if it was just me and Eric and Matt Griffin, emptying out our couch cushions looking for money to book people. So we get the opportunity to do, I think, and we'll see how it shakes out, but at least now we're planning to have more guys from CMLL come back for Dean 3, who in what organization, what order, and who they're against. That's still TBD. But and then we got guys who are coming. Manders is coming. Adam Priest will be there. You know, like the Dean guys
Excellent.
who were on the first two shows are going to be on this show too and doing something. What they're doing, yeah, we'll see.
So pumped, man! I'll definitely be watching that one from across the pond whenever it gets posted to YouTube or whatever. But yeah, I feel like half of the time it's like the stuff you tell me that just comes together last minute, or a guy we didn't even expect we're going to get, and then that's just one of the real magical things. So I'm real excited to see how it just happens to shape up.
I think we'll do another one, at least one more, whether it's with AEW or just back to the pure indie grind of it. I think we caught the bug at least enough to keep going at least one more past this one at some point. And then who knows? I guess the future's promised to no one. We're gonna keep doing this. Like we're gonna keep doing books. I'm gonna keep doing shows. I mean, I get my wife gets very into like projects and hobbies for like 6 hard months, and then they kind of disappear. Whereas I just like be like, all right, I like this thing, and I'll just keep doing it forever. Pro wrestling. I liked pro wrestling when I was 11, and now it's 30 7 years later, and it's like, all right, I got this book project and this fucking show I'm putting on, and I'm gonna throw on something on my TV real quick for the last hour, and so I don't I kind of keep my interests for long.
Preaching to the choir, man. My partner's the same, like gone through like different pottery things or crocheting or whatever, and I'm just like, man, I have made professional wrestling like my entire life, and I just keep making it more of it, but it's fun. We love what we love.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not doing cool stuff with it, right? And that's the other thing, right? If you're going to go ahead and get into something like this, you might as well try to do the most interesting shit you can do about it, rather than just argue with people on Twitter about how many people this company drew or what these rated, that kind of shit. It's like, who gives a fuck? Yeah. Look, here's a cool book. 1,000 people will read this book and be like, oh, this book's pretty awesome. Hopefully 1,000 people will read the next one, and and I somehow got Yahoo to pay me to write an article about Gypsy Joe. So we got to put on 2 shows. I had to put on 3 wrestling shows. I mean, I can't. You at some point probably went through a fucking light tubes when you were a little young. I mean, we how can we lose, right? Like at this point, we've already won. Everything else is just a victory lap.
Exactly. These are all things to celebrate. I think. Yeah. I never take it for granted getting to be involved in these weird projects, and the idea of just getting to say that with a lot of these things, actually getting some sort of financial compensation for them is just a wild little treat. I just honestly, so much of this stuff, I just get so much joy.
But it might buy us dinner.
Yeah.
Right. So that's fine.
Yeah, it'll pay the coffee and beer bill at my place.
Exactly. This is whatever money we make from this book will cover Zach's cello rental. He's doing orchestra this year, so that's cool. Put that on the cello rental card. Put some of this money away to lose on Dean for if I got into the indie world.
That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear.
Dr. Cerebro's plane ticket.
Man, I really want to hammer home for people. So first of all, if you're in the Philly area, be bloody sure to get along to that Dean 3 show with the Collision taping.
Low ticket. It's going to sell out for sure. So if you're on the fence, get off the fence, because you don't want to decide to go and not be able to go. I think it's going to sell out. I mean, I'm not saying that we're the reason it's going to sell out, but it will sell out. So pick that up, and then I think I don't know exactly the plan for airing it. I imagine it will air similarly on ROH's YouTube channel. A couple days later is how I think it's going to go. Awesome. But whatever, it'll air somewhere. We'll figure out a way so that people can watch it outside of just who are in the building for sure.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued to just see it in that venue. Like you're saying, so much of an emotional, sentimental place of ECW arena in a lot of people's hearts. and it might look a little bit different. The bathroom might be a bit nicer now, but it's still got the same, like concrete floor.
Yeah, I mean, I've only think I was really trying to think back. I may have only ever been to the ECW arena once, which is weird because I certainly went to a lot of wrestling shows in Philadelphia over the years, but a lot of those were like ROH shows. I didn't make it to an ECW show. ECW. When I showed it, it's a mistake that I didn't just take a bus there. I was in college. I could have done it relatively easily, but whatever. But I saw a Chikara King of Trios there, but I don't know for sure that I've ever been that I've seen any other shows there. I was trying to think back. I don't think I maybe I saw an ROH show there once. ROH at World ECW Arena. They must have, right?
Yeah, I mean they had a few shows there. They had that awesome Danielson match with Alex Shelley, the world title match there. And then they had a lot of the HD net tapings there back in the day.
I didn't go there. I was done by then. So maybe just the Chikara King of Trios, the one with Johnny Saint. May have just gone to see Johnny Saint.
Heck of a show to go to.
Yeah, it was good. They had that sort of Jigsaw, Kota Ibushi, one of the Young Bucks, and El Generico 4-way. That I think was a match that people really, really got into.
Yeah,
but yes, I personally don't have a huge ECW arena history, so it'll be cool to, do my own thing there. But it's not like that's. I know there's some people who are probably going to go to the show. Been to dozens and dozens of shows over the years. For the life of me, can only think of that one.
Yeah,
I don't have as good a memory about this shit as I used to, so it's certainly possible that I'm obviously forgetting something huge and memorable and important.
I've never actually been to a show there, but I've been outside the ECW arena. When I went to Philly once, I made a special point to go down and get one of the John's roast pork, and in the South Philly area, the Philly cheesesteak, I reckon, is my favorite Philly cheesesteak. And yeah, I made sure to do a little walk around the building, but maybe one day in the future I'll make it there. But I'm very excited that we've got a Dean show happening there, and I can't wait to check it out, man. But I also want to make sure to tell everyone, get this book. I've been promoting this thing on the podcast for a little while, and at the moment I'm really feeling like it's we got a little bit of coverage sort of in the early part. There was some cool articles, and there was the awesome article that you did with the excerpt of the Danielson interview, which I highly recommend everyone checking out if they want a little taster of the book. But exactly like you're saying about these, I feel like the interviews with Moxley, it's some of those matches are just some amazing stuff that people are really sleeping on right now. And the book in general. So I'm really telling people, if you like AEW, if you like these early years of AEW, if you like bloody wrestling matches, if you dug the original Way of the Blade, check out the book. I think you'd really get a kick out of it. And I, honestly, hand on heart, I'm really proud of the work that we did with it, man. I think I really enjoyed collaborating with yourself, with Jonathan on the whole project. I can't tell you how excited I was when I originally would get the match lists and go through what was going to be included, and then, like I said, going through and rewatching these matches and doing the still frames and screen grabs and frame by frame trying to find the right reference picture of it. It was a lot of work, but it was a big time labor of love. So I guess more than anything just wanted to say thank you, man, for letting me be part of it.
I love doing it with you, and like I said, we're going to keep doing projects together until we're both old and gray. That's my plan. And the book hasn't sold. There are a lot of people who bought the first Way of the Blade who haven't bought this one yet. So I can't imagine if you bought the first Way of the Blade and thought it was cool and enjoyed it, that you wouldn't also think this was cool and enjoy it, right? Obviously it doesn't have the. So you're not going to get matches from the 1970s and matches from, in Mexican junkyards. In this one, it really is more just a television product. But I think the same art is really great. The writing is really great. And the interviews, I think, were, I thought some really, really cool you really got those guys dug in and really talked about their careers and talked about, the way they view wrestling and think about it in a way that I don't really know. I've never seen a lot of these guys go this deep in any other format, right? So this is good stuff, and I think that we want to keep doing more of these books, and it's got to sell okay for that to be an easier thing to get greenlit, right? Like, if this sells good, then it'll be a lot easier for us to convince, Hybrid Shoot to let us do Way of the Blade 3. We'll probably do it anyway, but it'll be it'll be easier to convince them to do it if this sells better. So if you're like, you're on the fence or something like that, pick it up, and we really help us out and help out the project of trying to like do interesting, cool shit, in the sort of margins of pro wrestling, which is kind of been my project since I was 20 years old, and wrote on in Death Valley Driver 3. You know what I mean? That's always been the thing. It's like, we want to try to do cool things outside of the mainstream, outside of the way things are traditionally done, and open people's eyes up to cool things they didn't know about. And, that's the great thing about, like I said, pro wrestling, is that as much as I've watched over my life, and, you can still all of a sudden realize that fucking Senku Shikata heavy metal from a Triple Mania was incredible shit, and I've never seen it before or ever heard anybody even talk about it before. Weeks ago. And that we'll keep doing that. You'll have to watch that, Chris. That's on the list. That's added to that got added to the spreadsheet. So you're
fantastic.
A picture of Sagre Chikata hanging heavy metal over a balcony, while his fucking blood flowing out of the top of his head.
That sounds fun as shit. Oh man, I must say as well, I listened to the emergency podcast that you did with Matt about the chain dog collar incredible match between Roddy Piper and Buzz Sawyer. And I can't tell you how much I love that match, and I love just hearing you guys nerd out about it. And even if you did repeat some stuff of previous conversations, I still thought it was wonderful.
Like, I've never done this bit before. You do enough podcasts. How many times have you heard, as Mark Maron told you about his SNL audition, right? Sometimes you're going to get some shit gets repeated. Sorry, it's how fucking work.
Oh man, I'm the worst for it. This brain, I'm just like, if I've said stuff before in the previous conversation to someone, I'm sorry. It's just, front of mind, whatever.
But yeah, no, that got added to the spreadsheet too.
Oh,
I need
excited.
I need the vault to continue to find me shit for the spreadsheet.
Yes, please. Man,
yes.
I highly recommend that match to everyone if you haven't seen it. I just honestly, I think it's the greatest dog collar match of all time. I enjoyed everything about
Piper
it.
Buzz is the best one. Wow.
I thought so. Yeah.
It's really fucking good.
I mean, I have a lot of love for the Valentine, one of course. That previously, I think, might have had that spot for me, and obviously the Briscoes, tag variation was also just mind blowing. But there was something about this one, like right down that finishing stretch, that I adored, of Buzz just being a complete wild animal gorilla man, just writhing, and Piper being so defiant, and just I thought that the finish was one of the greatest finishes I've ever seen. And further to what you guys said on the podcast, it's just insane to me that they had so many of the real prototype archetype kind of spots of the dog collar match down that early. Like,
yeah.
Did you say this is his first ever one?
For both guys.
Yeah, crazy.
I think there were dog collar matches earlier in history, but that was the first Piper one and the first Buzz Sawyer one. Buzz Sawyer didn't have that many. I mean, that was the thing. You think of him as a dog collar wrestler. I think he had 8 in his whole career. I mean, maybe he had some that didn't make cage match, but 8. Mad Dog Connolly is 8 a month. You know what I mean? Like he's not, so it's like, during this phone conversation we've had, he's had 3 dog collar matches while we've been on the podcast with each other. So yeah, I know. I mean, I would put Demas Mad Dog Connolly on that list.
Yes,
in that
absolutely.
tier. But of course, it's hard for me to remain objective about that at all, right? Like it's like think of it's like who are currently the best singers. Well, I still really love Bruce Springsteen, and then of course my son Zach's really good. It's like hard. Like I was saying, I can't be fucking checked. Match that birthed out of my brain and then somehow ended up happening. So, but I think that's up there for in the sort of top, in that A tier with the tag match with Piper Valentine, with Piper Buzz, and that's up there. It's funny, I did the best dog collar matches list for the Ringer, and
then so many great ones have happened after, right?
Ones have happened since or unearthed since, right? Where it's like, oh man, how did I not pick this? How did I not have this one on there? Oh, I guess it didn't happen yet, or we didn't know about it. But yeah, it would have been really high on that list for sure, especially because the tag match hadn't happened yet and the Demas match hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, with that kind of thing, I think I've changed my way of thinking about like greatest things ever from being like this, like, all right, it's just a fact. This is the greatest, dog collar match has ever happened, as opposed to like the one that I personally got the most enjoyment from watching. And when you can look at it that way, I'm like 100%, you were there. You experienced this like incredible Damus Mad Dog Connolly match from like feet away, of course that would hit in a different way than watching some older questionable footage of a match or something that you have less of a personal connection to.
Yeah, but I think something about Piper Sawyer too, it being a thing we didn't have and then had.
Yes,
right. Like it's something about that too, where it's like all of a sudden you find out on Monday that on Thursday you're going to see a fucking Roddy Piper Buzz Sawyer dog collar match. Where that's going to be on my fucking YouTube in 3 days, this thing that happened, 40 years ago, and all of a sudden we're just getting to watch it, and you never think, no reason to think you ever would get to watch it, and for some reason you thought it was a cage match up until like 3 days before it happened.
I was about to say
listed wrong on cage match for however many years, and like, so that was part, I think, really something too, where it wasn't like this thing, well, I got around to this canonical match people have been talking about for a long time, and I didn't watch it. I had this opinion about it, but it was more just like it didn't exist, and then it did, right? And I mean, even we were talking about that, like that. Did you watch the Savage Lawler?
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm very stoked to.
Really, really good, and that's another thing where it's like, well, I didn't even. Not only, I mean, we knew that Piper and Sawyer had a dog collar match in Atlanta on the Omni that theoretically might be in the vault, and someday we might see it. This thing, it was just like, did anybody have any idea? I mean, it's like a house show Lawler Savage match. It goes like
from
30
like
minutes.
ICW, right?
Well, I think it was unclear. I think it was from the ICW archives, but I think it was a Memphis match. I mean, it's on. Who the fuck knows? But yeah, I mean, that's like
Wyoming or something.
No. Where was it? It was in Missouri, maybe.
Yeah,
it was like in an ICW town. So it's a pretty interesting match because the first like 15 minutes are all just shtick because it was an ICW town and Savage was the heel, but had a lot of support because he was, he was an ICW. So they spent a lot of the first part of the match really turning the crown on Savage with a lot of like Tux Newman stuff and a lot of like Savage bailing out, not, talking on the microphone, like a 10 minutes of great Memphis horse shit before they actually started fighting.
Fantastic.
Because they had to basically make sure that the crowd, got the reaction they wanted from the crowd, which is cheering Lawler and booing Savage. And then they did, and then they had 14 minutes of bullshit and then another like 13 minutes of Randy Savage and Jerry Lawler beating the shit out of each other in glorious ways. But that was like more incredible because that was like fun. know this existed and had no idea it existed on tape and no expectation that you ever get to watch it. And here it is. Like, that was the other thing. Like, there's a lot of that Lawler stuff. It's like, nobody even knows who fucking owns it. Nobody really even knows what's out, whether there is copies of a lot of these matches.
I mean, the amount of times that the Memphis library was like sold in different questionably, legal ways, like who knows?
And you don't know whether it's like, is there stuff that exists that isn't out there, or are they just selling the stuff again that we knew we had, right? Like, I don't know if there is, is there a full copy of the Texas Death Match around? Maybe not, right? That just couldn't. That just might not have ever been taped, and so you're never going to see it. Whereas you actually do know there's probably a lot more Omni stuff that is actually taped and does exist, or the way that you just know there's a lot more Houston stuff that is taped and does exist and is tied up in the thing. And my friend Rob Bahari was down in Nakalpon, and apparently there's like a giant closet of Arena Nakalpon stuff going back to the early 80s.
Wow.
It just exists in a closet. So if I ever, like you said, that they just pulled something out and just showed him, it was like a rookie year Foligno match, like from 84 or something. It's like, oh my God.
Man.
So at some point I might have to, so if I ever win the lottery, I'm sending Bahari down with $25,000 in a suitcase and saying, go get the Nakalpon stuff out of this guy's closet. Here you go. Here's the money. Go buy this for I gotta whisper in Tony Khan's ear. You could probably convince HBO Max to put on a show of just Arena Nakalpon footage from Wouldn't it be cool if you bought the Futen from Daisuke Ikeda?
More Yuki Ishikawa for the masses, please.
Yeah.
Oh boy, man! It's an excellent time to be a fan of this rarities. I feel like we're seeing more stuff unearthed than has in a long time. So for someone like me that's a big time nerd for it, it's a happy time. But yeah, I can't wait to see if whatever next Omni shows we get. Fingers crossed.
Seriously, cross your toes too.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody come to Philly, watch Dean 2, and if you don't, come watch Dean 3 on when it shows up on ROH YouTube. If you have not watched Dean 1 or Dean 2, Dean 1 is available on IWTV. A fair amount of it is now on YouTube. We put up a bunch of it on a bunch of the top matches on YouTube to sort of hype Dean 2. Dean 2 is on the ROH YouTube channel. It's available to watch for free and check it out. Dean 3 will be available to watch in some form after it happens, either ROH YouTube channel or on Honor Club or something.
Everybody watch it, get those views up. I feel like it's a good thing. The more views we can get on these shows. Honestly, that Dean 2 matches you have to see. The big Cibernetico, and of course the dog collar with Priest and Connolly. Just an insanely fun little story they tell in like, what was it, 11, 12 minutes. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of y'all would too. But yeah, I think if we can get more eyeballs on this stuff, it's going to bode well, for future things. And I'll say the same thing about the new Way of the Blade book. Even if you already have the Way of the Blade AEW edition of the book, if you can jump on Amazon and leave some reviews, I think that is, really, really helpful for the algorithm and all that kind of stuff, and get it in front of a few more eyeballs. But yeah, guys, I just want to say a massive thank you to all the support for everyone who already has gotten it. But if you do have a pal that, loves the AEW and loves some bloody wrestling, give it a recommendation.
Give it a recommendation. It's a good gift. I know people have gotten the other books for Christmas or Father's Day or something like that, giving them gifts away. That's always really cool to see. And yeah, if you like the book, write a review. I always really always really touches me when people say they enjoy what we do. So I really, I read all that stuff, and read. I always love when people like on Twitter post a picture of them getting the book, and it's always like, I can't believe that anybody's interested in the stuff that I do. So I really,
so nice.
Yeah, it's really is a blessing to get to do stuff like that and get to get people's eyes on it, and yeah. So, and always fun talking to you. I think I'm going to hopefully have a new Way of the Blade, colon the canon, colon the deathmatch canon, maybe next week. And I'm going to be on behind the David and Chris's Behind the Sheets, Between the Sheets. What is that podcast? I'm going to be on that next week too.
Between the Sheets.
Between the Sheets, yeah. So I'll be on that next week too. So
making the rounds.
Making the rounds. I'm trying to get the book out in front of people's eyes, get the shows hyped, and get the articles on and if folks, I've written some. I don't know if people know this. I've written some very cool stuff for Yahoo over the last 4 months.
Yes.
So you can just search my name on Yahoo, but I've written a
high recommendation on the Gypsy Joe one. Such a good article.
Read that and get excited for the Gypsy Joe Invitational at Dean 3, and then I really had fun doing the ECW What If thing I did with Paul Heyman, where he talked about how he wanted to put the ECW world title on Frank Shamrock, which is something I'd never heard before, and it was a pretty crazy
that blew
story.
my mind. I was a big time Frank Shamrock fan from those sort of Strikeforce days. I was like watching a bunch of those Strikeforce shows with like him and Kung Lee. So I always thought
this would have been before that, right? This would have been like a couple of years. This would have been not so far removed from when he went like 8-0 in the UFC, but the UFC couldn't pay anybody, and he just kind of left, and so this would have been like right after that, even before Strikeforce. But apparently Tammy Sitch skunked the deal. That's what Heyman said. I don't know if that's true, but story. That was the story. I texted Frank Shamrock, but he never texted me back. So I just go with the one source on the article.
Man, I always thought, like, from that Pancrase stuff, like, Frank Shamrock, the one dude just so tailor-made for professional wrestling. It just feels like we were robbed that we never got a proper run of him in the professional wrestling world.
And also, how crazy would it have been if ECW had basically turned briefly into UWFI, right? How you would have had, like, because, Taz was doing some of that stuff, but he was
the shooter.
But he never had like an antagonist, right? It was always him. They never had another guy who was doing a similar thing, right? I mean, they had beat up Paul Varlins, but that's not really what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about like a real rival in that style that never really manifested itself, right? It was always kind of style clash stuff. Bigelow, Sabu or Shane Douglas or whatever, but you never saw you never really saw what would Taz do if he was working a shoot style match, and what would have like a Taz Frank Shamrock where it's like here's a Sandman match, here's a Raven match, here's a Shane Douglas match, and now here is this rings match on the main event of a fucking ECW show. Would have been wild.
Man, what I would have done for like Taz and Backlund or someone like those Backlund matches.
Maybe this means that maybe then they bring in Ogawa or something like that if this was successful, right? Who knows what that could have turned into, right?
What could have been?
Yes.
Man, everyone give that a read. I always love all of your writing, Phil. And yeah, it obviously brings me a lot of joy to get to nerd out with you on all these things. And yeah, it was just super cool for us to talk about the book. And I think that was a good part of our life for quite a while there. So it was nice to get to officially chop it up with you about it.
Okay. And more to come.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Phil. Everyone check out Phil at Yahoo. Everyone check out the next Action Dean show. And thanks so much, man.
Always a pleasure, Chris. Always love talking to you.
All right. There it is. Thank you so much, Phil. Man, that was so bloody nice I don't need to tell everyone how cool it is for me to get to work with Phil after looking up to him for so many years, and him being such a massive part of my expanding wrestling nerddom brain and obscure loves and of all the different types of weird wrestling out there. So thank you, Phil. I forgot in the intro to do my World of Chris Things thing, little update on what I've been having going on. I more was talking all about the book. I mean, that's mainly what this thing is about. But I did want to say a big thank you to all of the lovely people that I got to meet and chat with at Lucha Fantastica Melbourne this past weekend. I had a big old week. I flew down to Melbourne, which is like a 2.5 hour flight. I got into Melbourne on the Thursday, and I got to spend a little bit of time with Cousin Ben, for those followers of the show who might recall Ben coming on from time to time for us to chop it up. We'll have to have him again on the show sometime soon. But yeah, it was nice to just spend some quality time there. And then I had a big show at Collingwood Town Hall, and I am always so stoked to be a part of Lucha Fantastica. I mean, I don't know if I'm a part. I've got my art table there, so I guess in a sense I'm a part of it, But the main thing is Senor Fantastico and Paulina do just an absolutely amazing job in putting this experience together, this celebration of Mexican culture, of Lucha Libre, within Australia. It's the coolest thing. It is such a fun party atmosphere. I get to meet so many cool and interesting people through this, and get to have chats about my art, and it just makes me so happy to get to do. I remember specifically I had a wonderful chat with a dude who I believe he resides in America, or North America, perhaps Canada, I'm not sure, but he was telling me about the mystery wrestling show that he was at recently. I guess kind of like the evolution of the PWG Mystery Vortex thing. I think like Evil Uno is in charge of that, but it's just such a wild world out there where a dude could be on the other side of the world experiencing that show, and then I bump into him at Lucha Fantastica. But no, it was such a treat, and yeah, for everyone out there who might be listening, who I got to have a chat with you, that was just such a good night, both at the nighttime show and the daytime family show. It was such an awesome time, so that made me very happy. And then I flew back to Brisbane on the Sunday morning, got to catch up with some mates, and watch the end of this year's G1, which I need to say that, so there was some amazing stuff in this G1, but I would not say this was one of the best G1s in terms of its conclusion. I don't think that is necessarily a hot take. Sorry for anyone out there who might think I'm a hater. This was just not my cup of tea. But I will say I do think that Evil is a very underrated wrestler, and he's extremely talented when we actually get to see him wrestling. So I'll put that out there. So I don't know, we might have some G1 things to look forward to for the next week's match of the week. We'll see. Don't want to spoil things there. But yeah, then now back into it. All of the commission things. So I love getting to make stuff, guys. As a wrestling artist, getting to actually make things. Sadly, in doing this as a full-time job, it's not all that. You spend a lot of the time doing a bunch of other stuff. Bookkeeping for a lot of this week, and doing lame accounting things and all that kind of stuff. But end of the day, I love making stuff, and I love making stuff for people, and for people who are passionate about things, and for people that are passionate about wrestling especially. My gosh. I'm really stoked to be able to be getting back into that. I also have, in addition to the AEW Where the Blade book, I am just in the final process of getting the new Connections in Joshi book lined up. I've finished my illustrations for that one. Just want to say a massive shout out to Dan Ball, who has put this whole thing together. It's his baby, his passion project, and such a wonderful level of enthusiasm for Joshi wrestling. Celebrating the wrestling on the fringes is what I'm all about, and this is, to me, exactly that. I'm so stoked to have my illustrations a part of that book, to also have worked with Shining Wizard Designs on the book. I'm so excited, and I'm going to keep shouting it out till we have the details of the pre-orders and such. But I just got some little things printed up for that, and it was really cool seeing that the tactile illustration of the prints of the illustrations here, in person. To hold them in your hands, it's a pretty cool kind of thing. So I'm stoked on that. I'm stoked to be able to share it with you all. Other than that, I guess I've got a few things on the boil of some different commission things that I'm working on for the next little bit. I also want to let you guys know, as we start to get near the pointy end of the year, if you would like some sort of Chris Things commission piece, be that an artwork of your own, be that a gift, be that something for a business, or some sort of illustration for a passion project, or whatever it might be, I'd love to do that for you all. If you'd like to swing me a message, we can talk about timelines, see when it'll work to get it locked in the books, in the calendar, since I'm such an official organised person now. I love doing these things. So if you'd like to collaborate on such a thing, swing me a message. I'll let you know what we're looking at price wise. But most of these commission things generally start around about the $150 mark. Depending on level of complexity, we'll see how we go. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of today's episode. We've had a couple chunky ones here, but episodes of this podcast that I'm very proud of. Still blows me away that people voluntarily listen to this show, to my rambling nonsense, but it makes me very happy. I'm happy to be able to share my life and my journey with you guys. That's kind of what this thing has become. This bit of the podcast I'm doing right now, it's kind of my personal journal. I kind of get to reflectively kind of line up my thoughts a little bit. It's nice. It's nice for me to be able to do, and I hope that it brings some interesting something or other to anyone who voluntarily listens to it. But I want to say a big thank you to all the listeners out there. I want to say a big thank you to all the supporters out there, everyone who says a nice word or shares something on Instagram. Chris Things on Instagram, by the way, or people who frequent christhings.com.au, my web store, my website, a whole bunch of things on there, a bunch of illustrations, a bunch of paintings. You can get all your fancy art prints on there. On that note, I am hearing that, unfortunately, I think some tariffs are going to come into play with certain things that I send over to America. I'm not sure exactly what that is going to impact in terms of my prints or mainly original art, paintings. But I'll keep you guys posted on it as far as I know. But I do know that whatever this big change is, it's going to be happening at the end of the month. So if you would like to order something of mine, it might be a good idea to get it in before then. So just an FYI, just in case any of y'all might have been thinking about a purchase, might be a good time to get it in before the 29th of August, I'm hearing. But anyway, thank you everyone for all of that. Thank you, Social Suplex, socialsuplex.com, the home of this podcast and a variety of other fun wrestling podcasts out there, from One Nation Radio to Keeping It Strong Style to Imp's WWE Adventure to the AEW Match Recommendation podcast, all things elite. We've got the Trish and Sarah podcast. We've got Tunnel Talk. We've got all the things. So shout out to Social Suplex. And yeah, thank you to everybody for joining me on this journey. I hope you have an excellent week. And I will see you next week with, I'm assuming, another Match of the Week podcast. We'll see how we go. And that's it. Enjoy. Bye.